Hello and welcome everybody to this another lesson. I'm Adnan Ayaz, and today we will be talking about listening, its importance, and the barriers. Let's move on to the most important part and the lesson. Why is it moving? Okay, there we go. So the topics or the subtopics that we have in this lesson are types of listening, traits of good listener, barriers in effective listening, tips for effective listening. These are the things, these are the topics that we have in this particular lesson. But to be honest and very frank, I will not be able to cover all of them today in this one video. However, I'll be covering them. I'll be only covering types of listening today. So let's move on because, there is reason. I don't want to make the video very lengthy, boring. Rather, it's better to be short and brief. So that's what I want to focus on. The rest of the stuff will definitely be there in the other uploads. So let's move on and see what we have here. So first of all, we got listening. What do you mean by listening? The definition of listening. So how we define it? Listening is a process of receiving, interpreting, and reacting to a message from the speaker. Well, receiving, interpreting, reacting. That's it. So no communication process is complete without listening. Moving on to the next slide. Now we have an example here, kind of example that would tell you about the importance of the process of listening. Okay, so listening is an important skill. Listening is quite similar to reading as it involves the reception and decoding of the verbal messages from the other person. The following example will illustrate the importance of listening. In a biology class, a teacher asked the student to refer to a book, Origin of Species. One of the students sincerely went to the library and searched the catalog of the book library, looking for the book named Orange and Peaches, but to his utter dismay, he could not find it. When he approached the teacher, he found that the book was entitled Origin of Species. This is what happens when there is lack of concentration and listening. So that's a small example to help you understand and familiarize with the importance of listening. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, first of all, we have got to know the difference between listening and hearing and listening. If you know it already, wonderful. If you don't, you can now find it out. So hearing is merely a vibration of sounds on the eardrums followed by electrochemical response. In other words, hearing is an ability. However, listening isn't. You must have heard the terminology hearing aids. If you talk about listening, it requires voluntary attention, and then making sense of what is being said. Okay, so it requires your focus, your complete attention, and then you try to decode what is being said. So listening is done purposefully. However, hearing could be done without purpose, maybe unconsciously as well. Moving on to the types of listening. So we have active listening, passive listening, critical listening, appreciative listening, pretensive or pretentious listening. Then we have emphatic listening through therapeutic listening, selective listening. There's one missing, which is biased listening, and then assertive listening. I'm gonna make it quicker, so that we could wrap it up all in a shorter time. Okay, moving on to the next. Here, so type of listening, number one, casual listening. It's a kind of listening which it is about listening to someone or something without much attention and concentration. This type of listening has no specific purpose. Well, we have another kind of category here, which is focused listening, and it is about intentional and systematic kind of process. This, the listener gives his full attention and concentration on what the speaker is saying to get information, knowledge, and ideas. This type of listening is also considered as intensive listening, right? Moving on to the next category, and this is some other types of listening. So we have what number one, active listening. Active listening is to listen to someone or something attentively, and it is also known as attentive listening. Active listening involves attention, careful concentration of the considerations of the speaker's ideas, The listener participates in communication process actively and attentively. The listener nods his head, leans forward, or shows positive body language, which supports and encourages the speaker to communicate more effectively and enthusiastically. This is called positive type of listening. Number two, passive listening. Passive listening is this very stern, rigid, and orthodox type of listening. This type of listening is may create some confusion in the mind of the speaker about the true intention of the listener. The listener wears a flat face, serious expression, surroundings all the gestures that are used in active listening. Sometimes passive listening is used to show status of the listeners. There is no actually sense what is going on. Okay, so then moving on to number three, critical listening. Critical listening, it can also be called as evaluative listening. This type of listening involves critical evaluation of the speaker's thoughts, ideas. The listener assesses, so many SSSS here. Okay, the listener assesses the speaker's depth of knowledge, choice of words and tone and style of the listener. This type of listening is used in seminars, conferences, group discussions, and other formal types of interactions. Then we have appreciative listening. Is this type of listening appreciates and supports the speaker. The listener encourages and motivates the speaker to speak more and more. It could be said like you listen to music, watching a movie, like listening to a movie, or something like more kind of a story that you love to listen more. So this is what we call appreciative listening. Moving on to number five, pretensive or pretentious listening. This kind of listening is also called as false listening. Okay, the listener pretends as if he or he is listening attentively to the speakers, whereas the listener is not paying attention to the speaker. Even the listener may nod his head, smile at the speaker, lean forward, or might pretend to write something down. The speaker is under the false impression that the listener is paying attention. This one is classic. You know, the word I've written classic because this practice is commonly done during the class. The students tend to do this. And during the lecture, they pretend that it's writing everything. They understand everything, man. They are on the top of the world. And that's why I wrote it as a classic. Moving on to the next one, number 6. Emphatic listening. This type of listening exercises emotional influences on the listener, not only understands the literal message, but also understands the emotions and the worldview of the speaker. It's about understanding the speaker, his emotions, everything. Then we have number 7, therapeutic listening. It's from the word therapy. This type of listening involves a healing process in which a person reveals there's a mistake here. I'll add it that later. So the person reveals their suppressed desires. The listener listens to the speaker with the purpose to let the speaker's suppressed feelings or emotions or memories come to the surface. Okay, that happens in that you might have been able to spot in most of the movies. It happens in movies actually. You know, that kind of hypnotizing kind of process, hypnotism. Moving on to number 8, selective listening. In this type of listening, the listener listens to only important and specific information. The listener does not pay heed to other topics or issues in the speech. No comments, please, because you must have heard people saying no comments. Just try to have a background of why people say no comments, because they're selective about their listening. They're not paying attention to every word. They're just picking a few words and they respond to only a few sentences or a few particular kind of questions. Okay. Then we have number 9, biased listening. In this type of listening, the listener is biased and prejudiced about or against the speaker. The listener has preconceived notion about the speaker and the speech. He has already made up his mind not to trust the speaker. This could be done in maybe during the interrogation kind of thing. Yeah, that could be the case. Okay, so the listener shows Where is my cursor? The listener shows lack of respect for the listener. Yeah, again, we have a mistake here. So the listener shows lack of respect for the speaker. Okay, so that's the interrogation room is the best example. Moving on to number 10, assertive listening. In this type of listening, the listener allows the speaker to express his ideas fairly and frankly. Respect the speaker. Okay, he respects the speakers and gives him right to speak. Okay, that's what the assertive speaking is. Then assertive listening encourages the speaker to communicate his ideas in an open environment. There are some wordly uh, uh, errors. Do not focus on that. I hope you've gotten the point. And this is it for today. I hope we have something else. Oh yeah, traits of a good listener. But we're not going to do this today. We're just going to cover we have covered these types of listening today. And in the next video, hopefully we'll be covering the next. I hope you have something to take away from this lesson. If you really like this, if you think this is useful, do not forget to appreciate that. Okay, in any way you can. Thank you very much for being a good listener. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.